Welcome to this edition of the Weekly Dose. Challenge your perspective. This is Patrick Dare from Washington, D.C. Justice must never take a back seat. That is a quote from Fred Gawley, who commented on my last week's posting in which I said, "It is Uhuru, Kenyans have spoken." Now, the central theme of my postings have been saving the soul of Kenya. That Kenya is bigger than any individual. That Kenya can survive an individual, whoever it is, but we cannot survive chaos. Before the election, I had called for Uhuru and Ruto to stand down, that they needed to do so in order to save the soul of Kenya, because they are two individuals who have been accused of the most heinous crimes against humanity, and yet they were seeking to be elected and to be leaders of the very same people that they've been accused of. As we know, 2007, 2008 elections resulted in the most hateful, the most heinous crimes that Kenyans have meted against each other. Over 1,200 people died, and over 600,000 people got displaced. This almost ruined the country. And for these two people to have been accused of this or masterminding those crimes, it brought to question which is within the constitution of integrity. So I was asking them to step down on the point that at this point, they probably don't have the integrity to come back and ask Kenyans to elect them leaders. Well, Kenyans did, or so it appeared. Uhuru was declared the winner. And at that point, sticking with the same principle of Kenya is greater than the individual, I called on Raila Amolo Odinga to stand down and save the soul of Kenyans. That he had done, and I took notice of that, and very rightly so, and anybody who is objective and reasonable and looks back would agree that, in my view, or would agree with my view that Raila Amolo Odinga is probably the single one person in Kenya who has made it possible for anybody to stand up and say, "I want to be the president of Kenya," regardless of their background. He has suffered personally. He has been detained. He has joined other side in order to fight for the greater good of the country. The TNAs, the URP or UDF, and all other parties can now stand tall and say that, well, I want to be a leader of this country because of the democratic space that Raila Amolo Odinga has so persistently fought for. And so I gave him kudos for that, and I still do, and I still believe that. And so when I called for his standing down, was primarily for the peace of the country. But the Constitution also allows for a petition in a case where an election is questionable. And Kenyans, the declaration of Uhuru Kenyatta, as it has come out, is highly questionable. The IEBC has exhibited the most incompetent process for any election, the results of this election have no integrity whatsoever from the reports that we see. We've seen, and if this is true, ballot papers being discovered way after the election is over. How can we trust the numbers that come out of here? And therefore, it is perfectly right to say that now that there's a petition, we cannot, and Kenyans should not, accept justice to take a backseat for the sake of political expediency. I must applaud the code people for saying that if the courts don't agree with them, they'll respect that. And that is what the law must require. The law allows for justice to be brought to an open. The Chief Justices have a very big task ahead of them. This is a test to the democratic space and the rule of law that all Kenyans have come to expect. I must say, I don't envy the Chief Justices, because this is going to be a precedent. This is part of history. This is that point at which the judiciary system will either bring encouragement to the people of Kenya that the rule of law is actually taking place and that the judiciary is actually very, very up to the task of what comes ahead. Now, regardless of whether they nullify the election or say that there was not enough impropriety in the election process that warrants the nullification. But one thing they must do is they must show that they're impartial. Impartiality must be their guiding force. It must be their guiding factor. And in that way, they'll show Kenyans that the rule of law actually matters. That the rule of law is all Kenyans must do. Because if that is not shown to have happened in this case, then the danger is that we may be thrown into another circle of anarchy, where people will not trust that the law is on their side, that justice can be done, and therefore can promote the very, very undesirable result of a nation that don't have direction, that does not respect the rule of law. Vigilante justice cannot have a place in a democratic state. I know democracy is difficult. And we must all agree that we are at that point where, like a baby, we are crawling and very eager to walk. And like a baby eager to walk, they get up, they stumble. They get up again, they stumble, they make 2 steps, they fall, they get up. These elections, we are at that point where election after election, we fall, we get up, we stumble, but with every step, we must make an advancement. And with this petition, the judges of the Supreme Court have a fiduciary responsibility to help Kenya make that one step towards democracy and towards saving the soul of this country that we all love. May God bless you all. This is Patrick Daya, and this is your weekly dose. I challenge your perspective.